So fresh off the press, we have the winner of Hasbro's 2018 Transformers Fan Vote. And John Warden, the head design manager of Hasbro, of the Transformers brand, did a little video that early leaked online to the Japanese websites and started to leak online now to the English ones, announcing the winner. And lo and behold, the one that we originally kind of were voting for, Impactor versus Mirage, or hashtag Impactor versus Mirage all over the social media, won the voting. And so John Warden gave a little blurb of what this means, and he pretty much said, and I quote, "The Wreckers, led by Impactor, are a highly skilled team of mercenaries that work best when the odds are at their worst. They are a valuable asset to the Autobots in the war, and can Mirage convince him to join the Autobot cause?" Now, like I said before, what I think this means in the past, whatever the voting stuff ever was, it had a big impact on the fiction leading forward with machinima and everything. So I get a feeling now what the story is going to be with the Power of the Primes story coming up with War for Cybertron is going to be a prequel story explaining, this ragtag team, the Wreckers, which in this continuity have no affiliation to either Autobots or Decepticons, and how they just kind of do their own thing. They're a neutral. And Mirage, who I guess because in previous fiction Mirage has always also been depicted as a character that's always kind of been on the fence, will be a character that's also like, hey, I used to be on the fence, why don't you come join us? And probably is going to be that story explaining that. Right. Now, what this also means is we're going to be getting 2 brand new toys of both of these characters in a 2-pack in the deluxe scale. So like I said, it's going to be great. We're finally going to get a brand new deluxe Mirage that will be, not just a retool from the Combiner Wars stuff. And as much as I enjoyed the old classics one, a lot of people weren't a fan of that. Yeah, a lot. And it's funny because me and you, we both really like it, but I know a lot of people, they weren't a fan of it because it was kind of tall and skinny. And like we discussed in the previous podcast segments about this, at the end of the day, it's one of those early classics toys, so it kind of has that early engineering and stuff that's very different than what we have today.
They didn't find their quote unquote voice.
Yeah, they didn't. And again, for the more purists that want something that's a lot more like a G1 Mirage, that old classics toy really it hit some areas but not every area. So I think this time around we might get something like that, although again, because this is a War for Cybertron thing, we might get something more of a Cybertronian Mirage. So picture more, for anyone that played the War for Cybertron and Fall for Cybertron games, when you made your custom character, you had like all these kind of like big spoiler Formula 1 parts that you could make, probably pulled maybe from, I don't want to say Mirage, but I think it was probably pulled from the pieces that were used to make Drag Strip in the game. But either way, picture something that's more of that Cybertronian kind of look. And the same thing, like, and it's funny too, because technically this would be the second, quote, War for Cybertron Impactor toy, because when they did the Bruticus Combiner team, well, the Combaticon Bruticus Combiner team for War for Cybertron, the deluxe one, right. They did a repaint of those molds with slight retools and just threw a whole bunch of Wreckers names all over them. And so there was, if you look it up, there is an Impactor toy that's a War for Cybertron mold, but it's just more just a name toss than anything else. But either way, I mean, this will be, if this gets made, this will be Impactor's 3rd toy. The second one being the first one being the one I just mentioned. The second one being the subscription service 4.0 figure from Fun Publications back in 2016. And so this would be his 3rd figure, but it'll actually be the first time he has his own original mold this time around. So that's cool for him. For Mirage, it'll be I want to say it'll be his 2nd Classics-esque toy, not counting like other scale stuff and repaints and everything. So he had his very first one, and then he had the repaint of Drag Strip from the Combaticons. And now he's going to have this one, which will be a brand new mold. So one was an original mold, one was a repaint retool, and now he'll have an original mold too. The only thing I could bring up aside from this is, so what does that mean afterwards for repaints? What could we expect from Mirage and Impactor when they're going to have these molds made, and then what will be used afterwards from these molds? Well, the obvious Formula One based cars, obviously. Maybe if you do a little tooling and twisting, you might get a Cybertronian hot rod out of it, or a Cybertronian blur. With Impactor, he's always been depicted as some kind of heavy all-terrain vehicle slash tank slash whatever, depending on which artist from the UK or otherwise is working with him, with his drill hand and everything. So
and his like shoulder cannon.
Yeah, with a shoulder cannon. So that could be one of a million things. If you tool it enough, you could get like a Cybertronian tank ore out of it. You know, like there's a lot of weird things that could be done with an Impactor mold. Again, I'm just speculating on what it could be, because I mean, we don't have any final images of what the actual items look like, and the images that I'm going to be posting in the segment here are just going to be two examples of their last toys that they got, just to give people an idea of color schemes and what we could expect in the future if they kind of want to pull from that. But hey, we got the winners. I'm not surprised by what I wanted to vote for being the winner, because it just was the most logical one in my opinion. Right. I mean, even the Wheeljack one, as much as it sounded appealing, it still meant that we had to have a Spinister, which I felt was not necessary. And I know there were some people that were commenting in the video saying, well, the Spinister was a club exclusive and it wasn't retail, so it was harder to get. And yeah, I agree with that. That is true, but at the same time,
we also have a Wheeljack that's a masterpiece Wheeljack.
Yeah, well, and there's a masterpiece Wheeljack that was fairly easy to get online. That wasn't something that was like, you know, a limited run and then that was difficult. There's plenty of retail releases of that Wheeljack from a Japanese side of things, and then there's tons of stores online that are selling it affordably. And you combine that with the fact that, yeah, same thing with tracks, and I just felt the other characters just didn't need to happen. And again, like to me, Impactor, like if you had to like rank the characters just from a popularity standpoint, every one of them had one character that was popular if you were a G184 guy. So you know, you had your Wheeljack, you had your Mirage, and you had your Tracks, which is actually an 85 guy, but those were all popular characters from a G1er standpoint. The other side of the spectrum with those guys were all obscure characters. But of those obscure three characters, I would firmly believe that Impactor would be the most popular of those three. So you might have a whole bunch of Wheeljack fans, but would those Wheeljack fans also want a Needle Nose? You know, you have a lot of Trax fans, but would those Trax fans want a Spinister? Excuse me, it's actually the other way around, but you know what I mean. Like, you know, would they want that? Where people probably looked at the Mirage and go, yeah, I'd like a Mirage, and then they look at the Impactor and go, yeah, I'd like an Impactor too. So it was just a more logical choice in a lot of different ways.
I think the only Impactor that we have, well, I guess quote unquote third party, is you know, just try to narrow it down, is that one from Mastermind's Creations.
There's to my knowledge, I think there's I think one or two others, but I'm not sure if those ever got released. That's the thing. I know the one that you're referring to. That was the one that kind of uses the Metal Slug deal.
Yeah. Well, afterwards they changed it to look like the Metal Slug.
Yeah,
that's what it got inspired by. So that's what I'm thinking about. So I'm thinking that if third party's willing to make a toy of that character, then I would definitely assume that they're popular in some shape.
Oh yeah, well that's just it. Like I said, if I in my honest opinion, if I had to rank them of popularity from like 1 to 6, I would feel that Wheeljack is probably the most popular. Although not my personal opinion, I feel that Wheeljack would probably be the most popular. Then it would probably
and I would also say that Wheeljack kind of you know, gets brought back in Prime.
Oh yeah, he's been
and then he gets retconned into being a wrecker as well. So all of a sudden, all these extra add-ons to him, he gets like, you know, extra. He gets extra cred.
It's funny too, because even the media that was used to promote this voting, they had Wheeljack holding a sword, which was not something associated with that character until the Prime series.
Exactly.
You know, so But the point is that like if I had to rank like popularity of the character, and again I would put Mirage number one personally, but I understand that Wheeljack is way more popular than Mirage, so I feel like Wheeljack would be number one, Mirage would be number two, Trax would be number three, and then Impactor would be number four, and
Yeah,
then
because he hasn't had I feel he hasn't had like a TV or a movie kind of like tie into that character. So it's only
yeah.
if you're really reading the comics and any version of the comics that
Well,
is,
and especially
you know.
even from a comic standpoint, I feel Impactor had a bigger impact, no pun
Mm,
intended, just because the Marvel books he was a big deal. The Sins of the Wrecker stuff and the Wrecker stuff done by IDW. Granted, yes, Spinister made Spinister and Needlenose made appearances in the Marvel books, but they were more second fiddle to Thunderwing. When you're talking Dreamwave, they had a small little Spinister made a small little cameo in the Dreamwave books. Not much else going on there, and it was the Armada books of all things. And then when you look at what's going on with IDW, yeah, Spinister and Needlenose do have appearances in IDW, but I don't think it's not enough to garner the voting. And when you think
right.
about it, the IDW reading population is only a small percentage against everyone else that was voting. You have guys that are just toy collectors of
Hmm.
Transformers. I mean, when you run Transformer conventions and when you do Transformer conventions, you see that there's a large sum of the population that don't read the IDW books at all.
Right.
I was James Roberts', sidekick that whole weekend,
Hmm.
and so you get to see face to face every single person that's a fan of his stuff on a deep level, and it only made maybe 20% of the population of the con. If and I'm being nice by saying that,
Okay.
and that's
Okay.
no insult to James Roberts, but it shows that there's some guys that are just G1 masterpiece collectors. There's some.
I can honestly see that, like, if we go with that logic, that the fact that Impactor had a third party counterpart, and then also not too long ago, Mirage had Sphinx, you know,
Oh, he had
and
Sphinx, and I think there was
yeah,
another one too. I think
yeah,
so.
exactly. So I mean, that can kind of gauge it a little bit more as well,
Totally.
and yeah, and I feel that,
In the end, it was just the most
people are
logical
probably like, ooh,
choice. I mean,
we could
it.
probably get a. Well, I was gonna say we could like people are probably also thinking we can get an official version of these guys.
Well, yeah, and
Let's
and
go
and
all
not
in,
to
you know?
mention, like I said, from a personal standpoint, that's why I made that call because I personally wanted to see those. But from a logical standpoint, I
Mm,
just felt that that's how it was going to go down because it just made sense from a voting standpoint that people were going to go in that direction. And it wasn't until I heard about the Cybertronian Wheeljack that I kind of go, oh, well, now there might be a little more interest in that. But by then, I think it was already too late. I think that if they were more upfront about what they were probably going to plan with these individuals, it might have helped a little bit. But I think ultimately in the end, it was it was a given from day one that Mirage and Impactor were going to win. So, but that's who we got coming. So let's look forward to that. I remember when Windblade was announced as our fan creation. I think it took like a good 4 to 5 months before we actually saw concepts and stuff, and they revealed them at BotCon.
mm,
So chances are maybe by the time SDCC rolls around, we'll
mm.
have a good idea of what these characters look like. At least even from a digital standpoint, we might just have digital CAD photos. We might not have obviously final product that takes a lot longer,
Yeah.
but we'll definitely have some kind of digital stuff. Although this is supposed to be a 2018 fan vote, so it really makes me wonder. They're probably going to have that product ready in time for the end of the year. I don't know.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe.
That's really interesting. So it's something to consider. But hey, Impactor versus Mirage hashtag yo it won. So sing the praises. Post in the comments what you think about this. If you're happy, if you're not happy, and I guess in this case, if even if you're not happy, well then out of the two, which one are you most looking forward to?
Um, I guess both of them, but I don't know because I really did like that Classics Mirage, and I do like what people do with the third party Mirages, the like the Sphinx and all that, and I think I learned more about Impactor through that third party one. Like that kind of, oh, this character, okay,
this guy exists.
So, like
yeah.
this guy exists. Oh, he's got like the Spartan hat, the Spartan helmet going on, and then he's got a shoulder cannon. Like it's very iconic. It's very kind of like that doesn't
That
leave
and
your mind,
when you
you
say
know?
that too, it's very iconic. It really is, because when you look at all these silhouettes of a lot of Transformer characters throughout the years, the shoulder cannon thing really is only used with like a G2 Megatron, a Tankor, and then you kind of like hit a wall after that point.
Yeah.
There's not many characters. You would think something as simple as like a shoulder cannon. Yeah, you have like the G1 Autobot cars like Wheeljack and Jazz and stuff, and they have like some kind of shoulder cannon, but it's such
like you could name a ton of them.
But even with those characters, it's such
cannons.
an optional visual. You know what I mean? Like,
and then also his claw hand, his harpoon hand.
Well, yeah, but what I'm trying to say is like the cannon thing, even with people like Wheeljack or like Mirage, or a lot of the other like G1. Actually, it's funny. A lot of the G1 Autobot cars kind of had a shoulder cannon thing.
Like double shoulder cannon,
or even double in some case, yeah.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is it wasn't a defining element of their character, and when there's different versions of it throughout the years, it's absent, because it's not what defines them. Especially when we're looking at even classics versions, it's especially the case too. I mean, there has some that keep that, but there's some that don't. But when it comes to a Tankor, that's always present. When it comes to a G2 Megatron, it's such a integral part of their silhouette. So, and it's going to be the same case with Impactor here. So it really gives us a spoiler sheet of what to expect in a lot of ways. But I mean, if they mix it up, I'm really curious to see what they'll do. So anyways, I want to hear what you guys have to say. Definitely comment below.